Welcome to Cybersecurity District, the podcast where we interview the most inspiring minds in the cybersecurity industry. Get ready to meet our next guest in the district. Today, we're speaking with Kim van Lavieren, a cybersecurity leader with a truly remarkable and international journey. Kim is one of the founders of Dawnguard, an extremely ambitious cybersecurity company he co-founded together with a former podcast on the show, Madi Abdurazak. They recently just raised a couple millions before they even have an official product, so it's a very exciting time. And before Kim became an entrepreneur, he served in the Dutch military for 4 years as a Marine, and that's really a role that shaped much of his discipline and also his leadership mindset. After his military career, he transitioned into cybersecurity, taking on various CISO and CTI roles as a consultant. His journey also took him across the Atlantic, where he joined Amazon, a company we all know, as a security engineering team lead in the US, also a very interesting position. So from the battlefield to the boardroom, and now the founder of what might become one of the most exciting new players in the cybersecurity landscape, I'm very excited to learn more about Kim's path and also his vision for the future, and also the future of Dawnguard. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited. Your career started in a place quite different from the original tech boys and girls. You joined the Dutch Marines. Can you tell us a bit about your experience and how it also shaped you as a person?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've always been a person that loves challenges. So I have a lot of family members that were in the military. And when I was looking at what I wanted to do, I wanted to give something back to Holland, and I felt that joining the military was a great way to do that. So I looked at what would be the most challenging unit to get into from civilian life, and I ended up with the Marine Corps, specifically the officers training. So I enrolled and went through a strenuous selection process, and after many months, finally able to start in officers training. And things that I really learned there was that your limits are not nearly where you think they are, right? You can go far beyond what you ever thought you were capable of. Something that really stuck with me, is for example, sleep deprivation training. You don't sleep for 120 hours, but you're still expected to lead a platoon of Marines. Just the impact it has on your mental capacities and your physical state is tremendous. But what you'll learn throughout that process of going through, that training is that you can easily do it. You just have to really set your mind to it and push yourself to keep going. And for me, that was definitely a really important thing. Same thing goes for discipline, right? They always told us, try to hurry if you have time, so that you have time when you have to hurry. And that's something that's really stuck with me. I try to finish things as fast as I can, make sure I have everything out of the way that I need to do, so that, when the pressure is on, you actually have the room to make the right decisions and do the things that you want to do. Another thing that really relates to business as well is the fact that, no plan survives first contact. What they mean with that is that at any point in time when, for example, you would engage in combat, is that your initial plan doesn't hold up. It's the same in business, right? We go and make all these plans for the future. We think we're going to go this direction and we'll all work out perfectly. It never does. Something always comes up and changes. So one of the things that they teach you in the military is to make decisions on limited data, but to always pick a direction. It's better to go the wrong way than to pick no way at all. And that's something that I love to take into leadership as well, and is very relevant to the cybersecurity community. I've seen many leaders that are unwilling to make decisions, therefore put their organization at a standstill and ultimately damage the organization. Whereas leaders that do make decisions are oftentimes capable of at least getting more positive outcomes, even if it's the wrong decision, right? Because at least you're moving in the same direction with your team, and you're getting things done.
Yeah, incredible. It's funny that you mentioned the training, like sleep, lack of sleep.
Yeah.
That's like, for me, it sounds like the worst training ever to go through. So guys, we've prepared a little training for you. Let's go without sleep for a couple of days.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, something that I found very difficult to deal with that is if you don't sleep And for example, they do things like they take your watches, they take away your capability to know what's coming up. So you have all this uncertainty, you have no sleep, and you don't know when things are going to end, right? You might start marching with a really heavy backpack and you don't know where it leads. It could be an hour, it could be 10 hours. You just don't know. And you have to deal with that uncertainty. And really, one of the things that always stuck with me is we would do long runs or run around with big logs or a lot of gear. And then in the end, you would walk by the military base and you think like, hey, we're done. But you weren't done. You were running straight by the base just to make sure that you had that mental breakdown that you're like, oh, are we going for even longer? And then you would turn around just after the military base, right? But they just tried to put pressure on you to see how you would respond, and also to teach you how to learn or teach you how to deal with that uncertainty and really, get the mindset of it doesn't matter how long this takes, I will see it through. And that was very very interesting, and that's definitely something with the sleep deprivation that makes it a lot harder to deal with that, right?
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I think during this period of your life, because you have a software development background from an educational perspective, but during the Marine, you also deal, of course, with a lot of communication back and forth. And at that time, you also develop sort of a knack to understand the technology more and more, and that's also something that sparks your interest. Can you elaborate on how the transition slowly happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, I sustained some injuries and I had to have some surgeries. Spent some time in rehabilitation, and I was transferred to a different unit where I was named communications officer. And one of the challenges we had at that point is that we had a military base that had daily operations that were fully on paper. So we had to, or my task was to fully automate that process, but it had to be extremely secure, right? Because what we were running into is that a lot of the systems that were in use at that time were insecure. For example, there were laptops that during penetration tests, I found out that they would give you access to weapons rooms and all the assault rifles in there because they didn't take the proper security measures. So there was really a big focus on making sure that these systems were built securely, and that meant that you didn't just have to architect and build for the functional requirements, but especially that non-functional set. And that really ties back to something, my dad taught me early on. He's a software engineer. He said, when I started programming when I was about 10, focus on security, because people don't think about that. They just build the functionality, but they forget that it's going to be used in a context where not everybody might be or might have the best intentions with your system. And that's something that I really learned there to make sure that you threat model, that you take all your security controls into account, but also account for the fact that people might unwillingly cause issues in your system, right? And that really, for me, sparked my interest to pursue the cybersecurity related career.
I think I heard you say at the age of 10.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was interesting, right? Because my dad had this big book, Java for Beginners by O'Reilly, and it was in English. And I didn't speak English, but he just handed me the book and was like, good luck, figure it out. And I did.
I was reading Harry Potter, I think,
right.
at the time.
I always had a fascination for solving puzzles, right? And programming is really that. You take a large problem, you dissect it into smaller problems that you can solve, and then you combine and build it back up to serve as a solution. So I found myself in high school doing things like building an online game with some of my friends, right? Rather than, going to the cinema or something like that. So I was just really passionate about it. I could program for hours and hours and hours. So that's something that I actually still love. If I get the program these days, I sit down and I kind of like wake up out of my programmer trance. It's like, oh, wait, it's bedtime. And it's like, I started really early this morning. It's just something about solving those issues in the most elegant, best way you can do that really just grabs me and makes me love it. So
I hear that a lot from developers, and it's really addictive also that they get into a sort of a meditative state.
It is. It's. I don't know how many times it happens where my wife will tell me like, "Hey, I told you that we were going to do this, or you said okay," and I'm like, "I don't remember that," and she's like, "Yeah, you were programming." It's like, you
Then
shouldn't
I'm not
ask me
listening.
things when I'm programming because I'm probably not listening.
Yeah. But it's interesting. You're kind of a rare breed, also at a young age already. That you're probably competitive. You love challenges, but
Yeah.
both physically and also more computer based. And that's something I don't see a lot. And then it comes back during your military time. That
Right.
it's also extremely heavy on your body.
Yeah.
But then also the IT side in you and the engineer also comes more and more into play, because towards the end you really focus more on the offensive security.
Yep.
And then you serve the Dutch army more and more from a cybersecurity perspective. Can you elaborate on that? And I think it was more on the offensive security side.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of things there, from pen testing to developing offensive software. As you can imagine, the military has capabilities to play a role in that online warfare area, if you will. So yeah, that was very interesting, and you definitely get a lot more insight in everything that goes around us, right? I mean, sometimes it feels like hacking is just something that doesn't happen very often, but we have to realize that as a country, we're under attack consistently, always, right? And this goes for a lot of large corporations too. And it also makes you realize that, when you build software, you have to build it in a way that it's resilient to those attacks, because it's not a matter of if you're going to get attacked, it's when. And that also means that in the case of our military, that you have to have offensive capabilities to strike back if need be. So it's very, very interesting context.
Yeah. And does that, I know this is going to be a difficult question to answer, but of course, you wonder how often is that really necessary, like to also be offensive when it comes to the Dutch cyber army.
Yep.
Okay, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of different aspects here. So you have, of course, nation state actors, and you got to think like offensive security capabilities are often used in the intelligence gathering industry as well, right? Breaching systems to gather data, for example. But also there might be actors that act on behalf of a nation state. So, for example, you might have some hacker group that acts on behalf of Russia. And you might want to be able to have offensive capabilities to take those instances out, right? So you see a lot of those articles on the internet where Dutch government was involved or the intelligence agencies were involved in taking down some sort of website or a malicious organization that does ransomware attacks. That's where a lot of those offensive capabilities come in as well. But especially now, if you look at the conflicts that are going on in the world, you got to think a lot of the attacks that are taking place on our infrastructure might be things that we need to be able to do in reverse, right? If you were able to use offensive capabilities to take out a power plant and thereby disable military capabilities, that's a far more or it's approached with a lot less violence there. Because you could take out an entire unit by taking out their communications or the power without having to ever shoot a bullet, right? So I think in a lot of ways, defensive capabilities also allow us to operate differently in the military domain and maybe prevent us from having to get to the point where we have to have boots on the ground. And of course, this is delicate, right? Because if you'd say, hey, these are acts of war, then we would be at war with a lot of countries, and luckily that's not the case. But yeah, it's definitely a very delicate landscape. But yeah, you need to have those capabilities. Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I was not expecting that you could share something, but this is very very insightful. I was also wondering, as a follow-up question, do you feel now you can provide more added value, or not now, but during the end of your time at the Dutch Marines, where you were no longer like the Marine, the soldier, but more in the IT landscape? Like, which position in the current landscape is actually more important, the soldier or the cyber soldier? Let's put it that way.
I think the cyber soldier, yes. Because I think the way that the military operates is changing fundamentally, right? We see that a lot. It's like, how often do we have deployments of physical troops? Most of the time we're operating with military deterrence, right? Putting warships somewhere, flying planes somewhere, having some capability like nuclear weapons that deters others from engaging in warfare. And I think that cyber domain has such an important role in one, the deterrence capabilities, but also trying to prevent the need for boots on the ground. And if it gets to that point, you've seen it with these attacks that have taken place, for example, on Hamas from the Israeli Defense Force. The capabilities that you get with that cyber allow you to have such a high impact, disable all kinds of targets without ever having to risk your own personnel, right? And of course, there's some nuances there. It's been operations that they've been carrying on for a long time. There's a lot more involved than just IT, but it plays a vital role. The same thing goes with drones. Like, we see increasingly that all military equipment is reliant on technology. So if you can distort that technology, you're going to render units incapable. Or if you don't have that offensive capability, then your units might not be able to compete with the other countries, right? Because they do have those capabilities. So I think in the essence, we really need to focus on a lot more cyber capabilities. And that doesn't mean that we don't need boots on the ground and that Marines or Army isn't important. They really are. Right, because a lot of these people, don't forget, also work in that cyber domain. So there's a lot of people that have filled both roles or have transitioned back and forth. But yeah, I definitely say cyber.
Yeah. Interesting. But it's with the NATO summit that was recently here in the Netherlands, in Den Haag. That's also that. The governmental spending on cyber is going to go up so much. So that's I think very much in line with the answer you just gave. So I think that's for the cybersecurity industry. It's a very positive development.
Absolutely.
Super interesting. And towards the end of your career at the Dutch Marine, you're really super focused on everything cybersecurity related. And then you jump into the civilian life again, and you become a consultant. And already, maybe because of your very niche skill set, you really climb the ladder and become CISO as a consultant. So you start advising a lot of different companies here in the Netherlands, but eventually also in the US. You decide to join Amazon as a security engineer.
Yeah.
What was that like, leaving everything here and going to join one of the biggest companies in the world?
It was awesome, right? As I said, I've always been up for a challenge, and joining a company at that scale, I mean, 1.5 million employees, it's immense, right? So the challenges that you see at that level, you don't really see anywhere else. You have to build systems in a completely different way because the matter of scale is so enormous. So that presents a lot of new challenges. The same thing goes for my team, specifically was responsible for onboarding third-party applications to Amazon. We would sometimes get hundreds of new applications that need to be onboarded in a week. So the tremendous amount and speed which an organization like that operates really makes it so that you have to have the best of the best to be able to engineer and architect all those solutions, make sure they integrate in your landscape, make sure that all your vendors meet your supply chain requirements. And that's a lot of fun, right? Because the complexity is that's what makes it so challenging. I've lived in the US for quite some years throughout my life. My wife is American, so switching up to the US wasn't that big a change for me. But it's definitely a different work ethic, right? Everything needs to be done. So there's a deadline, and it doesn't matter what you have to do to get it done, but you're getting it done. And I really kind of like that, to be honest.
Yeah, I figured with your background, what you said in the beginning.
Because the things that you're able to do are just so much larger and so much more impactful in the organization. But one thing that, I saw there that I've seen at every organization is that people don't like security. So the business does not like security. It's just they experience it as if it's some hurdle that is just there to annoy them. So one of the approaches that I really tried to implement in my team there is to make sure the work back from the customer, right? Because they're trying to implement new technologies. They're trying to add value to the business. And in my mind, security is not an absolute thing. There is no such thing as perfect security. There is only a balance between what business value you get and what risks you want to take. And I really implemented an approach to try to balance those things and also make it understandable for the business. Okay, what are these risks that you have and how can we help you balance those? What decisions can we make to, limit those risks while still allowing you to go and bring your applications into production fast? And that's really, I think, what made me so effective there as well. And I was able to really reduce the engineering workloads significantly in a very short amount of time by, optimizing those processes, really involving the business in why we're doing it, what it will bring them, but also approaching security from an enablement approach, right? So we can help you get this business value this and this way, rather than saying, no, you're not allowed to do this because you don't meet this little checkbox. No, it's about, okay, how can we enable you to do this in a secure way? And that's really where I thought of the idea behind Dawnguard, right? Because we had 160 or so security engineers there that were working day in, day out on security engineering and architecture.
And they're the expensive boys and girls, I figure.
They are extremely expensive, right? Interns earn upwards of $150K a year. So these teams are extremely expensive. And I thought there has to be a way to take this process and really condense to weeks or months it usually takes to get approval on an application or vendor to a matter of minutes, really. And that's what led to me starting PhD research to try to figure out, can we automate this process? Is there enough technical capability to do it? And
Exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that brings us maybe to the next chapter of your life, and that's indeed starting a completely new business with also a friend of the show and an extremely inspiring character as well, Madi. So you co-founded Dawnguard together.
Yeah.
It's very exciting times because it's just the announcement that you raised a couple of millions even before that there's a full business, there's a full product. But there's so much buy-in already from a lot of different angel investors from all over the world and now also from a big VC. Can you elaborate a little bit what the product does and also what problem you're trying to solve? But I think you already discussed it a little bit, but
absolutely. So what we see a lot of the time is that the existing tool landscape tries to fix issues that are already in production. They try to fix systems that are vulnerable. But we believe that to really make a difference in your security landscape, you need to do it correctly from all the way from the inception of your application or infrastructure until the end of its life cycle. So there's many companies that talk about shift left security. They'll implement something in the development life cycle to check your code while you're writing it, or do a vulnerability scanning on your application while it's still being worked on. But we really think that you need to start at the basis. And what is the basis? That is really your own policies and standards, your architectural design decisions, things like that. So what we do with Dawnguard is we allow you to go all the way back to the ideation phase. So imagine that you have a business unit that wants to add value. They come up with a great idea. What our platform does, it allows them to put in that idea, as in maybe in the form of an architecture drawing or a design document or even a prompt. We then tell you what you should do to make that architecture completely in line with everything your company needs to do. So that goes out from your own policies, international standards and best practices, laws and regulations. But we even ingest threat intel, vulnerability data from other tools in your security landscape to basically prevent you from making the mistakes you've made in the past, but also to make sure that anything you release into production is not just secure at the micro level, at the application or infrastructure level, but also in the coherence of the larger ecosystem. So we look at if your architecture is compliant to everything you've defined, but also if the connection between your architectures is compliant. So what we've done is we've now allowed you to say, hey, I want to implement quantum safe encryption. You tell our system, okay, I've changed my policy. Now I want quantum safe encryption. And we can tell you exactly what you need to do in the entirety of your landscape to be able to get that done. And that fundamentally changes the way we think about security, right? Now we have some policy that's defined somewhere that's oftentimes not implemented. There's no control throughout the lifecycle, but we allow you to put in that idea. We generate the code for you to deploy it. We integrate within your CI/CD process. We roll it out, and then we monitor your environment continuously throughout its lifecycle. So at any point in time, we know if you're deviating from what you've defined to be your baselines. And this is very exciting, right? Because if you're so far left in the development lifecycle, you have understandings that no other company has. Because we understand your architecture, we can understand the infrastructure layer all the way until the application layer. And that means that we, for example, know if you have security controls in your application layer that are redundant with controls in your infrastructure layer. And this is where it becomes really interesting, because that allows us to do much more than just security. We actually look at all pillars of the well-architected framework. So we can also tell you, are your architectures optimized for cost? Are they optimized for resilience? And these aspects together really bring the essence of what we believe in, that security should be an enabler all the way from the start. So we can tell you, hey, if you adjust this architecture this way, you save money, but you keep the same security posture. We can even give you alternatives. If you say, hey, okay, we have some budget restraints. Can you tell me what the best solution is within my budget constraints? And we'll tell you. And that is really what's remarkable, and what in essence automates the entire engineering and architecture process that is now fully manual, right? Engineers look at all these policy documents, all these standards and best practices, have to cross-reference them, have to then look at the larger scale. So many mistakes are made in this process, right? Even if you have the really expensive, really good engineers, because it's just too much data to process. And we've taken care of that whole problem. We really believe that after we launch our MVP publicly, we'll scale out our product and we'll be able to replace existing cloud security posture management, vulnerability management, and other tools that are further down in the development lifecycle, because no other company will be able to understand your security landscape better than we are, because we have the data all the way from the get-go at a very, very high abstract level, all the way down into the detailed configuration of your systems.
It almost sounds too good to be true, to be honest. Like it's so far to the left. You really start at the core. And then that's what I wonder. How can you go so far to the left that there is a current infrastructure?
Yeah.
And you basically say we're going to deviate and really start over while maintaining the current infrastructure, I guess. But then really go back to the building phase. Yeah. How is that possible? And
so what we do, say if you have
AI based, right? It must be very heavy AI based.
Absolutely. So if you have an existing environment, what we do is we read out your existing environment and we'll give you a path towards growth, right? So we're not going to completely redesign your environment, tell you like, hey, you now have to change your entire ecosystem. No, we'll tell you is like how to grow towards where you want to be. Through small recommendations, we'll build it up through the different levels of architecture up to the point that your entire architecture is now reworked and compliant with your own standards and also as optimal as it could be. The reason that we can do this is because we use a variety of different AI engines. So we have 5 AI engines that consist of multiple machine learning algorithms that are able to understand your architecture, are able to analyze all the components in your architectures against all pillars of the well-architected framework, but also analyze your architectures in correlation with other architectures in your landscape. Then we analyze every component, as I said, across all those pillars, and we get all the data that's relevant, for example, from your policy documents, but also from your threat intel feeds. So we're able to process tremendous amounts of data and really bring that back to, okay, what do you have to change? And then bring it to the point that we'll give you the code to do it. And that's...
Yeah, it's groundbreaking.
It is groundbreaking.
It shakes up the scene a little bit.
And trust me, we've been doing many months of research. We've done a lot of reading, a lot of tinkering to get to the point where we can do this, right? This wasn't just a process of, hey, we have this idea and we build a little bit of software and it works out of the box. No, this is months of banging your head off the wall, refactoring, rethinking the way you're doing things. But now we've gotten to the point that we can do this very reliably. So this is it really, as you said, it's groundbreaking. And I think the reason that we were able to do this is because we look at security from such a different perspective. Madi and I have over 50 years combined security experience, so we really understand the landscape. So we've always been frustrated with all the tools that do the point solutions and try to extinguish isolated fires. We really wanted to go back and solve the whole problem from the beginning. And that's really, where my love for puzzles comes in. That is a huge puzzle, right, to lay from the get-go. So you break it down into smaller issues, and from there on you start building.
Yeah. And why did you pick Madi as a?
It's actually an interesting story because I met Madi at a CISO dinner, and I was still working as a consultant at that time. And Madi is, of course, a very well-known figure in Dutch cybersecurity, and I was trying to recruit him as a customer because I was like, he would be great to have as a
customer. He works for a big company. Yeah.
But as we started talking, I realized it's like this man has such a shared vision of where this industry needs to go. And I'd never run into anybody that just from a mere 3 sentences fully understood where I wanted to go. It even was to the point that he drew up my entire vision from 3 sentences. I was like, I need to work with this guy. And of course, Madi, he has a similar energy levels. He is very dedicated. So we have a great personality fit. From the get-go, we've worked together super well, and I feel that with him, I can do anything. We can move mountains together, and that's really something unique that you wouldn't find very often. Because for myself, I know that I'm not a CEO. I'm a CTO. I love the technical, but I don't have to lead the company. And Madi is definitely the type to do that. So in that dynamic, even in our skill set, we very complement each other very well.
I want to cut in because you do have a lot of leadership skills. I think if you join the Dutch Marine and you don't have leadership skills, you're going to fall out very quickly. So you do have that skills, but you want to use them in different ways, or how should I see that?
Exactly, right? So I could lead a company, but it's not what gives me the most energy. What gives me the most energy is leading those tech teams and really bringing a team together to solve that complex technical issue. That's what I love to do. And that's why I really want to be the CTO, so I can focus on that and really, put my knowledge, my background into that and combine that with the leadership skills. Because still, as a CTO, you're leading teams. You have to bring a group together towards a common goal. So in essence, you're still using all these things, but in a slightly different context, right? It's less on the sales side, and something that I really like that Madi has, he has grand vision for the future. But my task as CTO is also to ground that vision into execution, right? To make sure that we get a good path to building that product. And that's what I really like, to look at that complex problem, bring it down to, okay, so what do we actually have to build to get this done, and how are we going to structure that? And that's just what I love to do. So, could I be a CEO? Sure. But I don't have the ambition to.
What mesmerizes me and also surprised me a little, to be honest, is that even before having a company officially registered and listed, you've already been able to hire some top engineers. You're with a team of 7, 8 people, I believe, before you actually raised the official funding and before you registered the company. So it's all from knowing people and people believing and buying into what now is more or less of a story, or at least the last months it was a story. Now it's for real, the investment is there. But how do you go about this? Because it's also really about maybe something bigger than a company. It's sort of a vision, a mission, a belief that you both put out there. But it's incredible to see the buy-in already at this phase. What makes your story and your personality so appealing, you think, to the industry?
Well, I think a lot of investors look at founder market fit, right? Are the people that are doing this, are they capable of really making a dent in that industry? And Madi and I are on the forefront of the industry, right? We're involved in a lot of different initiatives. For example, we also advise the Cloud Security Alliance on their cloud automation revolution. We both teach at universities, so we have quite a big profile on that. We're leading the way in this industry. I think that, plus the experience, but mostly really who we are, our personalities and our dynamic are what makes it interesting to investors, because they understand that we're people that, we're not just dropouts from college that were like, oh, okay, let's try some random business. We know what the problem space is. We know how to solve it. We've struggled with these issues for so long and really developed a vision over years of how you needed to address this problem. So we've talked to over 50 investors. We've talked to hundreds of CISOs, and everybody is ecstatic because they realize what the issue is. And they now finally, for the first time, hear somebody that can actually solve their biggest headache. And that is, how do I go from my policies into an actual secure target solution? And, that's created really a buzz. Like, we started fundraising and we reached out to maybe 2 VCs. And after that, we were just bombarded with requests from VCs. We raised the money in almost record time. And the same thing goes for the team. We started with 4 people at the beginning of the fundraise. And at the end, we had 9. And that's because, the people in our network that we talk to, they trust us. They have worked with us. They know what we're capable of. And they share that vision because they're all experts that have dealt with this issue and really want it solved. And I think, uniting over that common mission and really, because we set out to revolutionize cybersecurity, right? We're not here to just build a company and make a little bit of money, but we want to fundamentally change the way cybersecurity is done.
Yeah.
And that's something that people love and want to be a part of.
Do you have a slogan for the business?
So, yeah, we do.
And I heard you say it revolutionized.
It's rise into resilience.
Rise into resilience.
We want to make companies resilient across all those pillars, right? We want to make sure they're secure, that they're ready for any kind of performance issues. We really believe that, we have to drag the security industry out of the mud and bring it into a point where it can enable business.
If I can add to that, it's we also organize CISO dinners and get-togethers, but what I hear a lot is also that the way the industry is branded, it's highly unappealing.
Yes.
So it's not sexy. It's always the good guys and the bad guys, and it's not appealing or attractive. And also for new joiners, I think the industry has a decent name, but it really comes from a dark place. That the cybersecurity people in bigger organizations are also not the boys and girls that people want to hang out with. So it's good that you really want to change the industry from a new starting point. I think that's
well, we need it, right? We need a lot of young, bright minds to join this industry because cybersecurity is here to stay. It's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get more important.
Especially now, also with everything that's happening on the geopolitical level. I think,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked earlier about the fact that, maybe your cyber warriors are now more important than your physical soldiers. That is what's going to happen with the world. That's where we're going. Every company is going to need cybersecurity. And, it comes closer to us every day. It's like, look at all the automated devices that you have in your home. Those need to be secured as well. Look at your self-driving cars. If those don't have security, that could end very badly. So yeah, it's really, we need that rebranding. We need to get people enthusiastic about working in cybersecurity and really also make it a market that people can enter. Because I'm sure you've experienced it too, that I've seen a lot of organizations hiring cybersecurity personnel that frankly just don't know what to hire for. You'll see an entry-level role requiring CISSP, and it doesn't make sense, right? And that's something that, we have a lot of work to do. And I feel that Dawnguard will really help make this a lot more accessible, because now you don't have to know all these documents from the back of your head, but you'll need to be able to bring those together through tooling. So we'll also make it a lot easier for people to enter that field, use these tools, and still get very high quality results and be able to learn what the cybersecurity world means, because it's complex, right? I always like to think of security as probably the most advanced stage in IT, because you need to know about software engineering, you need to know about infrastructure, you need to know all the components of IT to be able to truly bring security.
I want to go deeper on that, because a lot of professionals that have a background in philosophy or history, they also reach out to us saying, I hear a lot about cyber, so I really want to get into the field.
Yeah.
But I tell them the same, like, be aware that cybersecurity is on top of IT. Yeah. So if you don't understand anything about IT, going into the most advanced level of IT, which I also see as cybersecurity, that's not an easy step. So you first need to understand the foundations. But still, having said that, what would you advise professionals that want to enter the industry and maybe know a little bit about IT, but are not at that level yet? I think there's too much of a wall now for people that want to enter. Maybe they work in IT already for 40 years or 30 years, whatever, but they want to transfer to the industry. But I don't see that happening enough. And therefore, we still have a major gap between supply and demand. So there's so many vacancies that cannot be filled right now. Yeah. But what would you tell listeners that are playing with this idea to start a career in cybersecurity? So that's one question. And my follow-up question would also be, what would you advise entrepreneurs that maybe now work as you did a couple of years ago as a consultant and are flirting with the idea to start also their own business?
Yeah, so if you look at the first part, right, the entry into the market, I think you have to kind of dissect it in two parts. If you have people that don't have an IT background, there's still room for you in the security world, but it might be a lot easier to enter from like a governance risk compliance perspective, right? Where technology plays an important role, but the detailed understanding of, for example, how to configure a system is not all that relevant.
But is that really the most sexy part of cybersecurity? Is that why people would join the industry? That's something I wonder about.
Maybe it's not the most sexy part, right? Everybody wants to be a hacker or something like that. But frankly,
somebody that worked for the Dutch Marine as an offensive soldier, that's kind of what people think of when they think about cybersecurity. And then they end up doing ISO compliance related work as a starting point. So then that's maybe not what they see in the movies.
And that makes sense, right? But nonetheless, it's extremely important because, for example, if you have a penetration tester that makes or takes penetration testing of a large system, they'll bring you a report with findings. If those findings can't be translated in a way that's understandable for the business, nobody will take the correct actions. So you can have super skilled technological personnel, but if you cannot lay that bridge between the technical teams and the business, you're not getting anywhere. So I think that is a really good place to enter because it allows you to get familiarized with the technology without having to know it in detail, and then start building out your technical knowledge. Because frankly, if you were to try to get into cybersecurity the regular way, it would take you many, many years to go through all the roles you would have to go through to really get in one of those technical roles, right? If you talk about people that have been in IT, my biggest advice would be get a home lab, tinker, play around with it, try things, download Kali Linux, download some tools, but also look at some certifications. We see that the barrier to entry in this market is highly reliant on certifications, right? If you don't have the right certifications, you don't get in specific roles. I had that issue myself earlier on in my career where companies would tell me like, we're not hiring you because you don't know anything about cyber. And I'll ask them why. It's like, yeah, you don't have any certifications. So I decided to just go do all of them, right? So I have 30 plus certifications now, and that I'm not saying that certifications tell you how good somebody is, but it does give you that check mark on your resume to get into those roles. And it gives you the trust to maybe land that first junior role to grow in. If you do really want to go the technical route, I would advise people to start as an analyst in a security operations center, right? Because that is probably the easiest area to enter.
Yeah, I agree. From a technical perspective.
From a technical perspective. Yeah. And that usually also has the lowest barrier to entry. And I think it really is good to work your way up from seeing incidents towards really understanding, okay, how does that ecosystem pan out? What does that mean for architecture? Because then you know what's going on in these systems that will help you architect later on. I've seen architects as well that have never looked at an incident and they don't really understand what the day-to-day operations teams are dealing with. And that's something that's important, because that also means that as an architect, you might want to think different about your technology to try to help your operational teams, because maybe if you design it one way, you're flooding your operational team with false positive alerts. While if you just did a little bit of tinkering, you might be able to get around that, right? So reiterate for me the second question you had.
Yeah. No, so this was the advice, and I can fully emphasize with what you said about people starting from a non-technical perspective, being more on the ISO risk compliance side, and then for the technical people, probably try to get in as an analyst, but do your homework, do the home lab, get some certifications. I think that's really spot on. And then my second question was indeed, now you've tasted already the beginning of becoming an entrepreneur, and there's so much buzz, so much buy-in. And that's also a rocky road, right? You have some wins, but you also have things that don't go well. So it's also probably a very challenging way of life. I think it's also a way of living. But what advice would you give young people or other entrepreneurs now that want to, or at least consider jumping into becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
What tips would you give them?
I would say that if you go and try to be an entrepreneur, don't try to just take something that's already there and improve on it slightly. Try to think big. Try to think of ways that you can fundamentally address an issue that nobody is thinking of. Because for us, a lot of the traction that we've had so far is because we're not just trying to be the next vulnerability management tool or automatic pen testing tool. We're really trying to redefine security and even create our own security category, right? I think if you can do something like that, your impact will be far greater. And it will be easy to find yourself a team. It will be easy to find funding. But that means that I would advise to definitely do a lot of research in the problem space you're thinking about, right? I found myself reading hundreds of books and papers on the problem space, even though I'd worked in it for years, and still giving me new insights and really allowing me to grasp the problem and divining how we could solve it. So do your research and do something big. That's what I would definitely advise.
I think the bigger you go, the bigger the chance of failure also. So you need to have the courage and the boldness to really go and beyond.
I agree. And I think that for me, if it didn't take courage, if there was no uncertainty, I wouldn't be interested, right? So I think that's something that you have to think about too. If you want to be an entrepreneur, is that something that you're willing to do? Are you willing to take that risk? Do you trust yourself and your team to make that step and go out there and put everything on the line to make it work? I think for us, when we made the decision to do this, it was a no-brainer. Madi and I just said to each other, let's do this. And we haven't looked back since. I feel that if you don't have that conviction, don't do it.
Yeah.
You have to believe in it.
Yeah, because that's also what I feel a little bit in the cybersecurity space is people that work in the scene are by definition a little bit risk averse, or they have to seek the risk. Where could it go wrong? And if that's always the mentality that you have to put into your work, becoming an entrepreneur also seems very big, because there's a lot of opportunities for failure, actually, and you don't know what's going to happen. So it's going to get out of your comfort zone, and the outcome is very uncertain. And that maybe also draw back to your earlier experience, also what you said, we have to make an action. Whether we go left or right, we don't know, but let's not go into a standstill. So we go into unknown territories, and that's per definition taking risks. So that's also where I think cybersecurity entrepreneurship is also slowing down a little bit, or not as big as I think it could have been. If we look at the Netherlands, I think in the US people are more risk aware. They love to take a couple shots at it. Maybe the first shot is not there, but then they start again and they take again the risk. Yeah, I think we are in the Netherlands think a bit too small sometimes.
I
And
agree.
That's really a shame, because it's not so scary when you make that leap of faith. Then it's really okay. And if it doesn't work out, you become a contractor again, or you
Yep.
find a nice corporate job. That's always there.
I mean,
So don't make the risk bigger than it really is. Go for it. That would be my.
that's
statement.
definitely, especially in that cybersecurity market. I mean, it will be easy to find a job if it doesn't work out. But I think also what you mentioned, with that uncertainty, you have to realize that you set out with a plan, but that plan's not going to stay the same, right? You're going to figure out that things don't work the way you envisioned it. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to change things, and that's fine. But once again, for me, it always comes down to that: make a decision. So if you're willing to take the step, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. And you can take anything that comes to your path if you really want to do this. And that will mean that you might end up somewhere in a different place than you initially thought you would, be going to. But that's fine, right? That is entrepreneurship. And I also think that's what's exciting, right? If this was a set thing that you knew, okay, it's going to work out this way, and 2 years from now, we're going to have earned this much salary, have this many employees, this much ARR, it'd be boring and it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah.
And I really think that, you have to have that feeling and take that risk. And what you do see, and that's something I found interesting during our fundraising, it's not just the entrepreneurs themselves that are risk aversive. It's also the investors. Dutch investors don't think as big. They are not willing to take the same risks that investors from other countries are. And I think that's definitely something as an industry we could do a lot better at, taking more risk on these young entrepreneurs that are coming up with great ideas and want to execute. Because if we don't, then we're not creating a climate where we're going to get the next solution. We saw that as we entered the industry with Dawnguard, we were the only European player.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Probably still are.
Yeah, but that's also the good thing, I would say, because if you know the industry and you know that people are rather risk averse, then it's also the entrepreneurial space is not overly competitive, because a lot of boys and girls that are listening now, they might not take the leap of faith. So if you think, hey, okay, I can do it, you're one of the few people that actually goes for it. So the competition is not so high as you might think at this point.
Yeah.
That's another selling point to just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think especially, there's a lot of companies that want to work with European cybersecurity companies that would love to not buy everything from big American companies. But oftentimes there's just no alternative. So I think even in some of the existing spaces, if you can get a great European offering, you'll do pretty well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and you just have to research it, and you have to buckle up and get ready for it, and really commit to it. I think that's the most important thing. Commit to it, you'll see it through.
Yeah, I agree. Commitment is one of the most important values in life.
Yeah.
Without commitment, it's going to be very tough, whatever you do. Yeah. Super nice. Can we talked about a lot of different topics. I was especially keen on getting to understanding your mindset and how that was shaped in the beginning of your career. We also discussed the very early success already with Dawnguard. In this last bit, I really want to discuss also, where do you see the future heading? So say we have this conversation in another 5 years from now. Yeah. What should the future look like, and what would you and Madi consider as success? Like, how big are you aiming?
Well, we think big, right? So in 5 years from now, Dawnguard will be a unicorn, and Dawnguard will be at the heart of many, many large enterprises architecture ecosystem. So we envision that our tool will actually become the centerpiece of change in organizations, that all changes and current state monitoring in that IT landscape will go through our tool, and that will allow organizations to optimize across all those pillars effortlessly and continuously. So that is quite a big vision, right? We think that a lot of the existing tools in the security space, and there's a lot of great tools, there won't be any need for them. We'll replace them. That's what we're going for, and that's what success looks like.
I love the B hack. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to have those, right?
Yeah. Aim high. Brilliant. And knowing the both of you, I I also feel confident that you're gonna reach it. So I'm very excited to follow the next years and steps. And to wrap up this podcast episode, we always have the same ending question, and that is, if you can send one signal message to all the CISOs across the world, what would this message be?
Oh man, that's interesting. Well, I'd say something along the lines of, buy Dawnguard. Your security team will never be the same.
Okay, that's pretty salesy right there. Okay, we could keep that in. But also, if it's non-related to Dawnguard, what wisdom would you like to share with them?
Cybersecurity is not just about perfect security, but it's about balancing business and risk.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a good trade-off. Yeah. Kim, thanks so much. It was really insightful. And
thanks for having me.
We keep in touch. Go big, go bold.
We will.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Stay safe, stay curious, and until next time, in the district.